What's up guys, and welcome back. In today's video we're going to be talking about my Camaro and how much it cost me to get this awesome machine right here. But before we do that, let's go ahead and give it a semi-cold start. I started it earlier, but we'll go ahead and well, I botched that cold start. Next stop is going to be the park. Alright, so how much did I actually pay for this 2010 Camaro Ss? I got this bad boy for a steal at only $14,000. And I'm going to go over why it probably cost what it cost and why I still think it's a great deal. And even though that might sound on the cheap end, why I don't think a lot of us really need to worry, especially with modern cars today, across all the brands for that matter. So before we talk about all the good things, which totally outweigh the bad, I do want to kind of show you guys though, there are some imperfections to the car. Up front, you know, aside from regular bugs, I don't know if they really show up too well on camera, but there are like some rock chips, especially like on the undercarriage. And I mean, that just happens with regular old driving. You can see like there's this little cracking issue right here, but I mean, these are just, the car's 10 years old, and I mean, for what it is and for the relatively good condition it's in, I think it's okay. But at the same time, we all need to understand that when we're looking at cars of this age, not everything's going to be perfect. Another minor imperfection is we can see here that it's not exactly flush against its part. So I mean, that's another little issue. What else? There are some minor paint imperfections, specifically, let's see if it shows up on camera. There's like whether it's thinned out yellow or just some dirt that got caught underneath the paint at some point in previous ownership. That's just another small insignificant issue in my opinion. You can kind of see there's more of it right there. If we go over to the brakes, for that matter, when I first got these and I test drove it, I didn't beat on the car. Obviously you don't beat on a test drive, but as I was driving home from after I bought it, I noticed that the rotors were warped, so that was something that I had to replace at first. And still something that's a little frustrating is I think there's some sort of warping on the caliper lip, is what one of my friends told me is probably the issue. But my brakes squeak a little bit under light pressure. When you get heavier on them, they're okay. And I've taken it to a shop and they're perfectly functional. There's no functional issues whatsoever. It just can be a little bit of a annoying sound if you're not used to it, but after a while it's really not all that bad. And again, considering the price, considering the age, I don't think it's anything to be too upset about. Another issue I had underneath there was power steering went out, so that was another expense I kind of had about 2 months after picking it up in March. But again, these are just things to expect, and I'm going to kind of go over why when you buy a car like this, and any car that's older in general, why you actually need to have money back for repairs. So let's go ahead and hop into the nitty-gritty. Alright, so let's go through this step by step now. So I've been looking for cars basically since last fall, and it just so happened, with COVID and everything, that I was ready to buy in March instead of May like I had ideally planned. Like, my plan was to just save up as much money as I could throughout the fall, throughout the spring, and to just come back from school in May and buy a really nice car for what I could afford, what I had budgeted for. Well, when we came back, I had to accelerate my searching, and because I was going to start to work doing like another type of side hustle. And I looked at this car for probably even a month before I'd even like known about us getting sent home from school. And I was just like, all right, like I'm gonna keep my eye on this one. It was listed at like 14.9, I believe is what it started at. So I was like, all right, okay. So I kind of knew what bottom dollar was going to be going in, and I knew that like I looked up Kelly Blue Book value, Car Guru's fair value, and everything. So, and that's something to kind of know if you're looking for a new vehicle. Like, get at least 3 different opinions on what your car's worth trading it in, and when you eventually buy her, because you don't want to get taken or anything like on a deal. You want to pay a fair price, and ultimately if you're working with a good dealership, it's going to come out to be a win-win. So yeah, back to the price. Is 14.9. I'd watched it for a couple weeks, dropped down to 14.7, 14.5. When I went down there, it was listed at 14.5 still, and after some negotiation, got down to 14 flat. And how I went ahead and went about this was, I had more than enough money in the bank to probably drop more than, well over, like probably close to 75% of it just, paid off right then and there. But again, it's really important when you're buying a used car to have money in reserve when something goes wrong, because I don't care like what somebody else tells you. When you're buying a 5-10-year-old car, there's gonna be something, whether it's super small or it's huge, something's gonna go wrong. Mileage. So when I bought this car, it had 104,000 miles on it, and I wasn't really all that afraid like I used to be. Like driving around a car or truck with 100,000 miles on it used to scare the crap out of me, like just the thought of it. And then even being in some, I was like always super nervous. But it wasn't until I started doing some research into the automotive forums like Camaro 5, even just Chevrolet forums in general, that I was like, well, nobody's really having all that much like crazy issues. Like, we all know BMWs, Mercedes, Audis, they all blow up after 100,000 miles. But Chevys, Fords, Dodges, like, you still see those running to this day. I really wasn't all that worried, but that being said, it's 100,000 miles. I knew to have money in reserves, and like I was able to afford it when that time came. So the engines aren't bad. Like, don't automatically check a car off your list because of its high mileage. Chevys last a good long time. I was watching Drive Hub's video over his C5 Corvette that he got for himself. He said he wasn't afraid of having a 100,000 mile vet simply because the C5 in the Corvette Museum actually has like 700 and something odd thousand miles on it, and it's not gotten any major overhaul. It's just regular maintenance. And I was just watching that video, watching a whole bunch of other videos on the longevity of Chevy engines in general, the LS based motors. I wasn't afraid, and like still I'm not afraid. I've got 114,000 miles on it now. It's running like a champ. So don't be afraid of high mileage vehicles, but definitely be aware of the conditions that they were driven in. This one honestly was taken care of pretty well. Like, we had service records and everything. It wasn't like somebody beat the crap out of the car or anything. You got to keep that in mind, but at the same time, don't be fearful of high mileage. So why do I ultimately think I got a great deal on this car? The car's price was 14 flat is what I got down for, which was definitely a great deal even with it being stock. But the thing is I had the cold air intake that I showed you guys in my review video. That cold air intake itself was like $500. And on top of that, I had a Flowmaster system that was installed by a previous owner, which, looking at most of the full Flowmaster systems, that's about another $1,000 plus labor on top of that. And I knew from the get-go that no matter what car I got, I was going to be doing an intake and I was going to be doing an exhaust. So I pretty much saw that as an expense that I didn't have to incur. So what I think that this car probably should have been listed around $15,000, $16,000, and I'm really happy considering that I got it for $14,000 flat. And again, there's so much stuff I'm going to do to this car, but for what it is, despite the minor imperfections, despite the, first repairs that I had to do to it, I've got something that's running really well and is going to last for a good long time. It's probably going to last as long as nobody wrecks it. It's probably going to last just as long as me. Like, if we're being real here, if it's taken care of, if everything's done properly to it, we're not going to have to worry. Nobody's going to have to worry about it as long as it's taken care of. So that's why I thought I got a great deal on this car. 14 grand's how much I paid for it. Go ahead and drop comments down below on the types of cars that you've had, the deals that you've had, and if you've got any advice for other car buyers across the big three, go ahead and drop them down below.